Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Fluffit Podcast, the podcast for furries by furries. My name is Uno, and I'm a green and pink raccoon from the UK.
And my name is Felix, and I am a purple wolf from the United States.
So, for today's episode, we're going to talk about the topic of performing in fursuit. So, can kind of be a tricky thing, I think, for a lot of beginner fursuiters or even people who've been doing it for a long time. So, we're just going to talk about a few tips, different ways that people perform, and kind of our sort of take on the topic and our recommendations. And yeah, so hopefully you'll all enjoy listening to this one.
Yes. Yes, I'm excited about this because this has been definitely something I've been wanting to talk about, and I think it's a very interesting topic. Now, really, the first thing that comes to mind for me is the type of performance that you're doing in your fursuit. And I think it can be divided up into two big categories. There's tons of much smaller, more branched off categories, but I think the two that come to most people's minds is silent fursuiting and speaking in your fursuit. And basically, silence fursuiting is you're performing without speaking. Maybe you make some noises, but you're overall not speaking, while speaking in the fursuit is the mirror opposite.
Yeah, so I kind of, in my personal sort of experience, I've done both. I cannot voice act at all to save my life. So most of my characters are mostly silent characters, but then if I'm at an event like a convention or a fur meet or something, I usually end up speaking anyway, just because people will speak to me, and like it's often I don't really have a handler of sorts to kind of answer questions for me and stuff. So I usually do end up speaking, but a lot of the time if I'm performing, especially performing around kids or something similar, like around the general public or something, I do often tend to stay a bit more silent and do kind of a miming kind of performance. Just because I find that easier because I really can't voice act. So yeah, but there really is no right or wrong way to go about it. You know, if you want to speak in suit, or if you don't want to speak in suit, like they're both very good ways of performing as your character.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there is absolutely no right way or wrong way with going with one or the other. I mean, it is completely up to personal preference. As Felix, I am typically silent. I think for me, I feel a lot more comfortable performing silent because I am quite self-conscious of my voice acting. I can't voice act to save my life. A big part of it, though, is that I usually have a handler, which for people who might not know what a handler is, they are essentially people that travel with the fursuiter. They're not in suit, and they will kind of interpret answers for the fursuiter if they're staying silent, if someone asks a question or the fursuiter makes a gesture or like a sign language type response. But I mean, there are plenty of people that speak. I mean, and at a convention, it might, I mean, I usually don't speak in suit, but if someone asks me a specific question, one on one off side, I probably would respond.
Yeah, so that's kind of similar to me in a way. I just think it's hard to stay silent if someone comes over and starts asking questions or anything like that. It can be quite difficult. But then again, you can always do both. You know, you can always speak sometimes or be silent other times. Like I said, there's really no right or wrong way. So it really goes with whatever you feel comfortable with and whatever you think suits your character, or just however you prefer to perform, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. Now, the one thing that definitely I've seen from different fursuiters is that some bring props. And I find this to be very fascinating, very interesting. So, I guess I have a question for you, Uno. Do you bring any
Yeah.
props when you fursuit?
At the moment, usually not, just because I don't really like to have to carry too much stuff. So like I like to have my hands free or my paws free. So I don't usually bother with props. But then sometimes like at a fur meet, people will give me a prop, like something like a big plushy donut or something similar. So like it can be quite fun sometimes to sort of interact with other fursuiters with props. And I did think about at one point making like a big plushy jar of peanut butter to bring to fur meets, because I feel like that would be fitting for, something like that, or like a big pumpkin or something. But um, for me, it just ends up being more stuff to carry usually. But then I know as well a lot of fursuiters can kind of rely on props, or they just prefer to have props because it's something to sort of work with, especially if you're a bit self-conscious about performing. I think a prop can definitely make it easier. And props can be really good for photos and things too. It's definitely a good thing to have. There's so many possibilities for them as well.
Yeah, that's very interesting. For me, I don't bring any props as Felix. I think this part of it is that I'm fairly still, I would say, new to fursuit performing. And I mean, I'm just don't really want to, like you said, I don't really want to carry something with those big purple paws all the time because I feel like they would slip and then I would have to bend down, get it. I would like carry it again, then it's gonna slip again, gotta pick it up. Accidentally just whacked the mic. But I think for me, it's a lot of work. Now, like I said, there's nothing wrong with bringing a prop. I mean, I've seen a bunch of fursuiters that bring props, and they look really cool. I mean, at Megaplex, when I went, I think one of the coolest fursuits I saw was a cyberpunk sci-fi raccoon red panda. I'm not sure what exactly the species was, but the fursuiter brought a like blaster, a blaster holster, like a belt of like sci-fi looking grenades, goggles. I mean, he was extremely decked out, and it definitely complemented his fursuit. I mean, his fursuit was gorgeous to begin with, but the added props definitely made it look really more. Um, it stood out a lot more. So I mean, props can definitely help have your fursuit stand out a bit. Um, Especially if you're theming your fursuit, or maybe it's just something really wild out there that most people would be like, when they think of that prop in the furry fandom, they would immediately jump to your character. I think one of the more famous examples is I don't remember the name the top of my head, but it's a dragon wolf YouTuber, and his main prop is life vests.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know the one you mean. Yeah, I think yeah, like what you said, especially with the cyberpunk raccoon. I think if props are kind of your character's trademark in a way, I think it really can help the character to stand out and help it to look a bit more out there, and kind of become a thing that's associated with that character as well. Like, I mean, like I said, I don't really have many props myself, but I did think about something like a big pumpkin for Uno, because I love Halloween and I always have like artwork of Uno in sort of Halloween settings. So it's sort of something that's associated with my character a little bit. Um, and as well with it reminds me with the cyberpunk raccoon as well. Like I do a lot of steampunk events, which isn't necessarily very related, but a lot of people do bring props like sort of weird looking guns and things. So I think if you had a character that fits into that setting, it can be really good to have those sort of things because they just make them look a bit more in theme and just kind of adds to it a bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's one really cool thing about the furry fandom is while there are many other fandoms out there, you can definitely use combine both. I mean, I was working on a Lynx steampunk character the other day, and I mean, I think that would be an extremely cool character if that turns out into a fursuit one day. And I think, I mean, there are plenty of, for example, using steampunk, a lot of furries that dress up in steampunk clothing have steampunk props that just stand out and they look really amazing. Now, kind of on the topic of fursuiting while silent versus fursuiting speaking, we're going to talk about a couple of examples that we've seen quite a bit in our lives. Either they are fursuiters in the furry fandom, or if they're mascots, because while mascots in, let's say, college sports here in the United States, or maybe performers at like Disney, Universal, or other theme parks might not be furries. They're end of the day, it is still performing under a essentially fursuit head, and
Yeah.
um, I mean, we're gonna share a couple of our favorite examples and ones that we would recommend performers to check out.
Yeah.
So, would you like to start out with yours, Uno?
Yeah, so this literally just came to mind while you were saying that about mascots, because I was trying to think of mascots that I've seen that I really liked. And one that springs to mind, it's kind of a story behind it, but um, in the UK, like not too far from me, there's a theme park. It's kind of like a little kids, like young kids theme park, called Sundown Adventureland, and their mascot is a bear. And there was this one time when my friend and I went to Sundown, and we were probably too old to be there. I think we were about 12, so we were kids, but we were a little bit too old to be there. Um, and my friend had noticed that in the cafe you could get like a kids menu, and on the menu was Teddy and chips, which,
What?
so you'll see where this story's going.
Oh
So
no.
I think that was like chicken nuggets in the shape of teddy bears, I think. And we didn't order it, so I don't know, but I assume it was that. And anyway, my friend found it hilarious. And then later on that day, we were out in sort of the main, like their equivalent of Main Street, like this little, it's like a fake little market town. And we were walking around, and the mascots appeared. I think they were called Sunny and Honey, like two bears, and they were walking around, and they are completely silent. They don't speak at all. They were just sort of mime performing. And my friend walked over to Sunny, which is the boy bear, and said to him, "In the cafe, you can get Teddy and chips." And he did this like incredibly angry sort of mime towards her. Like he kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. He like pointed to his eyes and then pointed to us, like to kind of say, "I'm keeping an eye on you too." But he was
Uh-oh.
just amazing at like silent performing. Like he looked like so angry, but he had this really happy face. And I just think that was a great example of like mime performance and a silent character that could really convey that sort of emotion without actually being
Oh my
able to
gosh.
express that.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely need to show me the photo
I will.
after the recording session because I don't know if any of you know Kumamon Bear, but Kumamon Bear is a Japanese bear mascot that is representative of one of the prefectures or regions in Japan. I mean, it's not going off topic very quickly. I mean, it's crazy that Kumamon Bear is worth $4.1 billion to the Japanese economy. I mean,
Wow.
it's just basically a fursuiter, and they just sell merchandise. It's amazing. But I mean, when you were telling that story, all I was picturing was Kumamon Bear, and I don't know why. Um, I guess for me, my favorite fursuit performer or mascot is Buzz from Georgia Tech. So, for everyone not familiar with college football, basketball, so Georgia Tech, which is a engineering university that a lot of my family members have gone to, has a yellow jacket mascot named Buzz, and he is super silent, but he is probably the wackiest mascot or fursuiter I've seen. I mean, this character will like run onto the field, do like a somersault, land on his back, um, and then he will like run to the goalpost of American football goalpost, like body slam it, and then like body surf and victory away. I mean, it's absolutely hysterical. And I mean, occasionally, Buzz has done some other like really wacky things, such as one time the Demon Deacon, which is another mascot, an old man essentially. He rides a motorcycle usually into the stadium. It's cool. He was wandering around instead of going for the goalpost. Buzz body slams him down. Another time, Buzz brought out a trash can and dumped it on top of Mr. Wolf, the NC State Wolf mascot, and he also does a lot of really fun things. Um, and it's just absolutely but I mean, Buzz is very clumsy, very quirky. I mean, he's very much curious. um and I absolutely love his body posture and reactions when you talk to him. I mean, I one day while I was at a football game against Duke, I was taking photos with Buzz, then a lady with a Duke shirt came up and hugged him, and he looks right down at her Duke stuff. He looks up and he kind of like gives her like the evil eye of like, go away, please. And then when she gone away, he tried rubbing where she hugged him off. Um, I think one of my favorite memories is, so when I was like 5 or 4, I was going around the stadium, and you have like 15-minute shifts for most of these mascots, and unfortunately, the but both buzzes were out at the same time. I was with one buzz, and then another buzz came up, and I mean these are identical fursuits, and I mean how they treated that was priceless, because I mean they were like stunned and everyone was like stunned. It's like, what's happening? There's two of them. They kind of like do this like, it's kind of like in TV shows, it's like, who's the real Buzz? And they kind of like examine each other, check each other out. I mean, and the one kind of like leaves, but also kind of like in your story did like the evil eye finger thing, and everyone was like awkward. But I was really now looking back at it, I'm extremely impressed how professional um they handled that. I mean, they didn't. I mean, I'm sure they panicked in the inside, but they did not show it at all. I mean, that's one of the great things with fursuiting is you gotta be very quick on your feet, and you have to
Yeah.
improvise occasionally, because a lot of crazy things can happen, and a lot of really unexpected things can happen where you can very much take advantage of that.
Yeah, I totally agree. So it's really about being in the moment and like, taking the opportunities that kind of arise. So like what I mentioned before, if someone hands you a prop or if you're in kind of like an interesting situation, or that's kind of a chance to like interact with the surroundings and just work with whatever you've got, because it's one of those things where you can't really rehearse it because you don't know how things are going to be at the convention or at the fur meet or wherever you're going. You really don't know what's going to happen, so it's really a case of improvising and just kind of going with whatever happens in that moment, which I think is one of the things that just makes it so much fun, and um, just makes it so like you can really kind of recognize the really talented performers and how they can sort of improvise so quickly to things.
Yeah, I mean that is I mean, I just find this mascots in general, fursuiters, to be very interesting and a lot of fun. Now, we before we wrap up the episode, we kind of want to share the our tips and the fursuiters and the mascots to watch and take notes from. Because I think in many ways, seeing how popular mascots or fursuiters perform is a really great way of um, practicing. Hey, this is what I should be doing. This is what a lot of people like when they're seeing performers. So I guess for me, one of the, I mean, we just talked about it, is I think learning improv and practicing improv is probably the most important thing with fursuiting, because a lot of things can happen, and it is some of the very best moments in fursuiting happen from improv. I remember at Megaplex, I mean, I was not expecting anyone wanting to give Felix a hug the first night, and someone did, and I was a little stunned, but improvised and I had a ton of fun. I think, I mean, it was probably my favorite of the Megaplex fursuiting moments for me.
Yeah, so it's yeah, like you just said, it's really about taking the opportunities, and sometimes you won't expect something's going to happen, but then it will, and like that can be really funny sometimes. I remember one time being at a fair meet, and we were on the Fursuit walk, so we were just walking through town, and we came across like some sort of live concert going on. And I don't know what band it was, but I remember they were like interacting with the fursuiters and saying like, "Oh, we didn't expect to see like a bunch of giant animals watching us today," and it was just one of those really unexpected scenarios. So all the fursuiters were kind of waving and like interacting with the public, and I just don't think anyone was expecting it. So the one of the best tips really that I can say is, maybe practice a little bit. Take the opportunities when you do go out in fursuit, whether that's to an event or just out in public. Um, Take those opportunities to kind of practice and experiment with. Either if you feel like you want to do voice acting, you could give that a go, or if you don't, you just want to be a silent character, you can also give that a go. And just kind of just take the opportunities, because the more you practice, the more comfortable you'll get with being in the suit, and you'll kind of figure out what works for you and what works for your character. So it's probably the best way I can say to go about it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I mean, I think one of the biggest things also is to be wild. I mean, if your character is very proper, not very wild, I mean, that's completely all right. But I think characters that do more wacky things, or kind of do more silly things, even if they're serious, stern characters. I mean, I'm just thinking of the Looney Tunes, for example. I think that can work very well, and I think that allows people to feel more comfortable. Is you're kind of embracing it, and even if something happens clumsily or something happens where there's a little wipeout or mistake, I mean, most people are going to think it's part of the performance. I mean, Buzz at Georgia Tech does a lot of really wacky things, and you don't know if the mascot accidentally tripped up on doing something or if it's part of the act. So embrace mistakes when they happen, and incorporate it into your fursuit acting, because I think people will not care and people might think that it's part of the performance. This is a wild example, or a very far one, but I think one of the best mascots to watch and take notes from are the Japanese mascots. I think there's tons of videos out there of like Kumamon Bear. There's a really scary looking one called Melon Bear, and I mean there's another one of like a kappa that carries a not a motorcycle, a guitar around, electric one, and plays it all the time. Is there this there's these really wacky moments, and I think those are the most memorable, and I mean they're very goofy, and I think in many ways they are the best, and when it comes to performance, because I think it helps with the nerves. It's weird saying that, being as colorful and as wild in terms of props, acting, this in general. And I think I think this watching examples of fursuit acting is really crucial if you and this improving. I know for me, one of the ways I take notes when I practice fursuit performing is there are a bunch of very old ESPN commercials of Sports Center Office, and they're one-offs, but they're very funny, kind of like ads. Like I think for one, the Steve Irwin, the gator hunter, is in the office and he notices Albert, the alligator from Florida, and he's like, "Crikey, that's a big one!" And then, I mean, he begins to tackle the poor alligator mascot. Then the alligator starts to wrestle him, and the person with Steve Irwin is kind of like, I'll just be going silently. And then I think my favorite one is where a man goes into the elevator. There's, I think it's one of the devil mascots. I don't know which one, but he's like going up, and the Devil nods his head no slowly. The elevators start to close, and before they close, he sticks his arm out and like dips very fast. I think one of my other favorites is there's one of Uga or Hairy Dog, which is the Georgia Bulldog mascot. He was at the water cooler. There was a little water spill spot, and a Georgia player comes in. He notices it, and it's like bad dog, and like grabs like a newspaper and starts whacking Hairy Dog because he thinks he peed on the ground or something. But I would definitely check those out, and definitely check out Disney mascots. I mean, they are. This is probably the. This one is kind of a little obvious, or a little bit like it sounds a little cliche from for me. It's like, oh yeah, check out Disney mascots. But I mean, I would definitely do it because they know. I mean, Disney is very strict in their hiring of performers for mascots, and they want to make sure people who are being the mascots know exactly what you're doing. But I mean, Disney mascots, both speaking and silent, are very good at what they do, and I definitely would check them out. I think my favorite mascot is a actually human, but I really like how the Gaston actor runs around Disney and does things. I mean, absolutely hysterical. And I think that's a very great example of a human mascot or human character that their improv and their acting abilities could definitely be. I mean, definitely just check it out. I mean, I absolutely love the push-up videos with Gaston, and I definitely love the ones of Stitch. Stitch is a mischievous little troublemaker, but he is just amazing.
Yeah, there's like so much that you can watch. I mean, sports mascots, Disney mascots, theme park mascots, like there's just so many that are worth watching. And even watching other fursuiters as well, like have a look at convention videos, different little interaction videos. Because they can give you a bit of inspiration as well, because there are some incredibly talented fursuit performers out there. So it's definitely a good idea to have a look. There's loads of stuff on YouTube. Take some inspiration, decide what you like, what you don't like, what you think you can do. And like what you were saying as well, it just reminded me when you were talking about embracing mistakes, because I have been working in the theatre recently doing the production of Oklahoma. And in such a big production, there are so many little mistakes because there's just no way you can avoid it. But having worked backstage and also being able to watch the performance, it is amazing how much the audience just doesn't notice. They just assume that that's part of it because the actors are just so good at just continuing on and just kind of not ignoring it themselves, but just like carrying on, incorporating it into the performance. And I think that ties into fursuit performing as well, because it is just another form of performing. So, you know, don't worry about mistakes. Don't worry if you don't get it spot on the first time, or you don't think you've got it spot on, because chances are anyone who's watching is not going to be thinking about that at all.
Yeah, there's
Um,
not going to be any like fursuit critics out there like
yeah,
critiquing your
exactly.
every movement, your every tail wag, and be like, I think that tail wag could have been much better. I mean, it was only 40, it only turned 30 degrees this way, not 45. It's like those are going to be people that are
Yeah,
that need to find a new hobby.
yeah,
But
definitely.
um I mean, I guess the last thing, and probably the most important thing when it comes to fursuit performing, and this is gonna sound very cheesy, but have fun. I mean, that is the biggest thing,
Yeah,
is have fun, enjoy it. I mean, you're gonna have a ton of memories with being in fursuit, and don't let nerves get in the way of you doing something super fun. I mean, it is absolutely magical, especially being acting your persona out. And I would definitely recommend for people who are nervous or on the fence of getting a fursuit and performing to do it. I mean, I live by the you only live once mentality, and it's something that I feel like um, you're definitely that you might regret if you don't do it, because it's just
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, I think if you think you're going to enjoy it, you think it's something you want to do, then chances are you're going to absolutely love it. So, I would say just go for it. You know, just act as your character. Like, don't worry too much if you're feeling insecure at first and it takes you a little while to get into it, because I think that's going to be the case for a lot of people. But then at the same time, sometimes if you put on a suit for the first time, you can kind of immediately just like feel the effects of
Yes.
being that character. Sometimes it's just as easy as that. So
Yeah.
I think it's different for everyone. But yeah, like you said, the most important thing is to just have fun with it.
Yeah,
That
no,
is
absolutely
the
agree.
most important thing.
My at Megaplex, my mother came up to me after I was in suit, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, like because I have a bit of confidence issues occasionally." She's like, "I would have not believed you if you told me you had like confidence issues or anything." And she's like, "I was like, why?" It's like you acted completely different in that fursuit. I mean, you acted completely like a different human being under there. I was like, oh, so I mean, it can do wonders, and I mean, it's super magical. Definitely check it out. And I mean, and don't be nervous. I mean, if the world's most profitable mascot, Cumin Bear, does adverts in a hot tub overlooking the landscape of Japan, or if someone's running onto the football field with tens of thousands of people watching you just to do a backflip, I mean, you're going to be absolutely fine. I mean, embrace your character, embrace your quirks, and have a ton of fun. But that is today's episode, and to all of our fluffy listeners, thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you all for tuning in. I'm really glad to hear that people are still coming and listening to the podcast. And we hope that you all enjoyed this episode.
Yep, I hope so too. Hopefully, in the near future, we will be dropping the Fennecat and Uncle Kage interviews. We do not have any confirmed dates of when those will drop, but we are hoping that they will come very soon.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to put those out there and hear what everyone thinks to those and to this episode too. And yeah, we will keep you all updated on that.
But until the next episode of Fluff It, stay fluffy and have a fluff-tastic day.
We'll see you all soon. Goodbye.